I'm Jared Harding, the Vice President of Marketing at Zenger Folkman, and I am delighted today to be the sidekick for Dr. Joe Folkman. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Jared. It's great to be here and talk about a really important topic, and one that I hope I'm pretty good at because, I've seen the data, so it's not looking promising at this point.
Well, we're going to see. We'll get into it. So today's topic is about boosting your leadership agility, and we're going to review the 4 enabling behaviors that have the most impact for you to increase agility. But before we dive in, I want to invite any that have just joined to participate in the Agility Index. And so again, if you haven't done this already, please type into your browser that URL. It's bit.ly/ZF Agility. Or you can open up the chat window on the right side menu there, and there's a hyperlink where you can click on it and go take that survey. So we want to give everyone a chance to participate, and we find that providing this self-data really does enhance the learning experience, and these webinars have become a great opportunity for us to be able to demonstrate that capability and how we're able to provide some really insightful self-data. The other thing that I want to bring up is, who is Zenger Folkman? If you're a first-time participant, thank you for joining. And by way of introduction, one of our key differentiators is that we know all leadership behaviors are not created equal. So why does that matter? When we work with our clients, our goal is to help them use leadership as a means for success, as a means for them to achieve their objectives. And leadership can absolutely be that kind of driving force. But you have to use behaviors that make a difference, that have an impact. And not all leadership behaviors have that same impact. So we use our decades of experience and global research to help our clients know which ones are going to make an impact for them. And studies have shown that when your leadership development strategy uses behaviors that make a difference, as kind of demonstrated by data, then your strategy is 8 times more likely to succeed. So we want to help you succeed, and we know that leadership and the right set of behaviors can get you there. So if that resonates with you and you feel like we can offer some value to ensure your leadership strategy is on the right track, then we'd love to connect with you. So all right, Joe, let's talk about what people can expect today.
We're going to provide for you an example of a micro-learning experience. We've done this around trust, speed, bold leadership. Today, it's agility. And we're going to really give you the insights from our research. We've done a lot of research on agility, and we're going to share that with you. And we think we have some really great insights about how to do that. The self-assessment that you filled out will give you some insights on your preferences around how to move forward around agility. And it's going to isolate 4 key behaviors that help you be more agile. And as you walk away, we're going to give you some insights in terms of some actual documentation of some specific actions you can take to create an action plan. So again, one more reminder, if you haven't done the assessment yet, we'd strongly encourage you to do it. It really helps us to have a better experience.
Okay, so the other thing that we like to do in these webinars is really give you, the audience, a chance to interact and see kind of the sense and feelings and thoughts of everyone else on the call. So we do this through live polling, and so if you've joined before, you know the process here. If this is the first time, then you get 2 options to join. The first option is you can open up a new browser window, or you can do this on a smartphone, a tablet, and you go to this website, pollev.com/ZF-poll. And it's important that it's pollev. The service that we use is called Poll Everywhere, and sometimes you start to put in pollev and it fills the whole thing out for you. Make sure it's pollev.com/ZF-poll, or you can just join by texting. And so that's simply done by texting the word ZF POLL, so ZF poll, and text that to the number 22333.
Jared, they don't have to download the app either on that, do they?
That's right. That's right. So when you join by text, you'll get a little notification back that says you've joined Zenger Folkman's meeting. There's also a little invitation to download the app, but you don't have to do that. So once you've got that confirmation text back, then all you have to do at this point is continue to text in your answers, and you're in the polls. So you can see our test poll up here, and what we're asking is, what is your favorite type of chocolate? And what you see on the screen there's dark chocolate, milk chocolate, white chocolate, and then the answer that I don't know why we put up here, but it's I don't like chocolate.
Mm.
So we see some answers coming in. Joe, what's your favorite type of chocolate?
I really kind of like the dark, but
Ooh.
not too dark.
Oh, me, I love dark, and I like dark chocolate. Like I'll go a good 75% dark chocolate bar is pretty good. I like that. All right, so thank you for participating. So hopefully this gives you a sense of how this works. And as is true, as we've done this in the past, not a lot of fans of white chocolate. I totally get that. All right, so our next poll that we want to do is actually a word cloud. So what you're going to do is just enter in one or two words that you think describe agility. And then they're going to start popping up on the screen. And of course, if you see other words that you kind of like, you can enter that word in again. And you know how word clouds work. The word that's entered in the most gets bigger and bigger. So we see some results popping in.
So watch and type, or type and watch.
Yep. Looks like we got flexible, change, disruption. Someone put in pipe dream. So we're going to see. We'll see about that at the end today. All right, thank you for doing that. So it was kind of fun just to get everybody's responses in, see what that looks like. So then, what is agility? And kind of taking our word cloud now, let's bring this down to a good description that we can all work from.
It's sure become a really popular topic, hasn't it, Jerry?
It is. I mean, it is a buzzword at this point,
yeah.
Right? And so in doing some kind of prep for this topic, we landed on a description that is workplace agility is the capacity to be consistently adapting, but without having to change the overall approach. And so often people think agility is just kind of simply, constantly changing, constantly going through disruption. But effective agility really is about being stable and dynamic at the same time. So to illustrate this point, I want to take you back in time a little bit. There's this guy, Frederick Taylor, and he's the father of Taylorism. And many of you, I'm sure, know who he is and this type of management theory. But it's this idea that it really seeks to create efficiency and productivity by breaking down every action, job, task into these manageable segments that are easily taught and easily measured. And this practice really began in the early 1900s. And for the organizations who've adopted it, they really started to outperform competitors, dominate their markets, and even attract the best talent. And it was the winning way. And when you think of kind of Taylorist organizations, you may think of large scale manufacturing, but a lot of those components exist, even in many of today's organizations. And Taylorist organizations are often depicted as this super efficient, well-oiled machine. So how do these organizations built as machines kind of fare in today's environment? Things have evolved much more rapidly today than they ever have before. There's constant introduction of new technologies, disruptive technologies. Information is incredibly more accessible, more digital than it's ever been. And we have a new type of talent entering the workforce. And so for all the positive things that Taylorism has done during the last century, an organization built as a machine today is really having a hard time keeping up.
Everybody's going to have multiple careers, and you're going to need skills that you didn't think you wanted or you needed. And that's the way things are going to work in the future.
Yeah, that's right. And so the new paradigm really for successful organizations is that they need to start acting more like a living organism than like a machine. They need to be, as we kind of mentioned, stable and dynamic at the same time. and have this kind of backbone element that may evolve slowly, but is capable of supporting dynamic changes and quick adaptations whenever kind of faced with new challenges or new opportunities. And an analogy that I really like here is you think of a smartphone. If you have a smartphone, you have a system that will allow you to interact with an app that doesn't even exist today. You have no idea what that app is capable of, can do, but yet you have a system that can automatically be able to allow you to download and interact with that app, even though it doesn't exist and we don't know what that app may do. So you don't have to build a new smartphone from scratch for every new app that comes out, right?
It's a great example, Jared. Well, and we have a really interesting question here, and the question is can an organization be agile if employees are not? The way you work today is not going to be the way you work tomorrow. The new things are going to come along, and so you think about all those skills that, as you think about what really is high performance today, and you realize that there's going to be a whole myriad of different skills that are being required tomorrow. The important thing about this is you think about employees and you think about organizations. Employees are co-creators of an agile organization. Their skills really blend with the organization itself to really create this kind of organization that's going to be successful in the future. And again, if you have a mechanistic organization, it's really difficult to change that. You can't do those new things. But if you have an organic organization, then it's flexible.
How would you describe your organization? You got three choices. Is your organization a little bit more machine-like, more like a living organism, or something in between? Okay, so thank you for weighing in. And we've got organizations across the scale, but looks like we've got some organizations that have some agility work to do as well.
So we're going to start with this research. We're going to show you a little bit about what we did. And to do this analysis on agility, we looked at data from over 90,000 leaders and individual contributors. We found a really great data set of individual contributors. There were 712 individual contributors where I had a good assessment of agility. And then I had another data set of managers only, and they had a really good assessment of agility. And then I had this large data set of 88,000 leaders. And what I did is I just dove into that data to try and understand agility and really understand what it takes to be agile. And as I did that, we came across some interesting questions. And the first question was, well, which gender is more agile, men or women? And notice that I'm saying which gender is more agile as a manager. All right. So we're going to show you data from both managers and individual contributors here. And it's interesting. It's fairly close. Well, that's good because the results are also fairly close. But let me show you the data here. And in the actual data, you can see that as managers, women end up being more agile than men. Women at the 55th percentile and men at the 46th percentile. And but you look at individual contributors and they're about equal, 51-50. And that is not a statistically significant difference between the men and the women. The question here is, and I don't have the answer to this, but is it possible that the reason why the agile managers, the women are more agile, is because it's the agile women that get promoted. That people can see their flexibility and they're able to kind of change and they can turn on a dime, that's one of the characteristics they're looking for, and that helps them to get promoted. Well, that's a theory, and we'll see how that works. So let's ask another question. Which age group is more agile? Are the younger people or the youngest more agile, or are the older people more agile? Well, okay. I can see the votes coming in. Well, there's some, okay, a lot of you are thinking that old folks aren't very agile. Okay. I'm taking this personally. Here's the data. So for managers, now this was interesting to us because I personally thought that the most agile group would be the youngest group. But you can see on both managers and individual contributors that the youngest group isn't the most agile. But as you go up a notch or two, you can start to see the agility increase. Okay, but what is true in both trends is that the 61 and older group are some of the lowest in agility, and so that's kind of typical. We find that over time that people that are older tend to be less agile. But I want to remind you, because of a trend exists, that doesn't mean that everybody is less agile. So I work with a guy who's a little bit older than me, and I never found anybody more agile than him. That's Jack Zenger, and he's incredibly agile. So let's go to the next one. All right, which level of management do you think is more agile? Do you think it's going to be the top management, the senior leaders, middle management, supervisors, individual contributors? Indicate which group you think is most agile there. And we'll show you the results. So the results are really interesting because I personally thought that top management would be very agile. But they're not. They're the least agile. Why is that? Well, I think, they tend to be older. That's true. But I also think they have specific roles, and they're kind of set in them a little bit. Do you think it helped them to be more agile? I do. So why are the senior managers they're the highest? Yeah. And I think it's that group right behind them that are, really trying to flex and maybe it's to get that next level promotion, but maybe it's also that they're seeing things that next level isn't seeing. In some ways, top management may be insulated, so maybe they're being protected or something like that. But I think agility across the board is going to be a key characteristic of success in the future. And let me back that up with some data, okay? So what we're seeing here is 712 individual contributors. And what I'm showing you is the agility, all right? Low agility, bottom 10%, high agility, top 10%. And then the bars represent overall effectiveness, okay? Now, when you look at that, you can see a very clear correlation between how agile a person is and how effective they are rated. And so that's individual contributors. And then this is the results for managers. Once again, there is a clear correlation that the more agile you are, the better leader you're going to be. And this is overall leadership effectiveness we're showing you there. So agility ends up being a key characteristic of success as a leader or an individual contributor. We think that if you can be more agile, you're going to be more successful.
It would almost seem common sense. I mean, if we were to have polled the audience at the very beginning, I'm sure if we'd have said, if you're more agile, are you going to be more successful? The answer would have overwhelmingly been yes. But it's also important because looking at this correlation, knowing that it is true that as someone is more effective, more agile, they're going to be more effective overall, then that also becomes a pathway for people to succeed, right? So if you're looking for something to give you that extra boost, that extra thing that you can add to your leadership that's going to give you an edge, then demonstrating and developing agility is a great place to start.
So what can you do to be more agile? It's interesting to just talk to people and say, well, what could you do to be more agile? And they come up with stuff like, just change my workspace daily. And, I bring in new fun things to put on my desk, or funny characters, or I love this, posters, inspirational posters, right? Put them on the wall. or volunteer for every project or every committee, or just volunteer for everything. That could make you more flexible because you're just out there. Or, well, yoga classes.
That'll make you more flexible.
Well, it should. It better. But I think it's a different kind of flexibility. And so what we did is we went to our databases. We looked at over 1 million raters on 88,000 leaders. And what we were trying to do was understand, when people were agile, what were they doing? What were the behaviors that enabled agility? And what we found is there were 4 key behaviors that enabled agility. The first one was to listen and learn. The information's out there. People will tell you what you need to do, but getting people to listen, that's a hard thing. The second one is optimism. Many people feel overwhelmed, and they just can't take on another thing. It's like, I've got too much on my plate right now. I can't change. I'm overwhelmed. And that keeps them from believing that they can do it. And so they feel stuck where they are and they can't do anything more. So it's the optimism they have about being able to change. The third one is the ability to stretch yourself. This is hard. I mean, when you think about doing something really, really difficult, something that's going to cause you some pain and maybe some embarrassment, a lot of people resist that. And the fourth thing is self-honesty. The person that lies to us the most is ourselves. We tell ourselves we're not getting that old. The first thing about being more agile is to listen and learn. The extent to which an individual is open to learning, listening, and respecting the opinions of others. I had a son-in-law, and he graduated with his master's degree. I was giving him a ride to the airport, and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He says, "You've written a lot. You've done all these books and articles. What's the one thing I can do to have a successful career?" Now, I would have been a lot happier if he said, "What's the 5 things?" One thing. But the advice I gave him was ask for feedback. The answers are out there. People are willing to tell you, you look like an idiot, or you look like a brilliant person. That was wonderful of that. They will tell you, but you need to ask, and you need to be willing to listen. And asking and acting on feedback is critical. And again, that's the first part of really being agile, is being willing to listen.
So the next one here is stretch yourself. And this is really the extent to which, you're willing to go outside your comfort zone, go beyond what you thought was possible. And when I was a freshman in college, my first semester, I had a pretty ambitious credit load. And, I think I was just a few weeks into it. I called up my dad, what should I do? It's too much. I think I should drop a class. And he said, "Son, get a job." And I said, "Say what now?" He said, "Get a job. Trust your dad. Save him some money. Go get a job and keep all your classes." And I'm thinking, he's crazy. But I did get a part-time job and got a actually pretty fun job at the school newspaper. And then guess what happened? That added element stretched me. And what that stretching did, though, is it made me a little bit more disciplined with my time. And when I needed to study, when I needed to be at work, and carried that out, and I got excellent grades the whole year. So, Jonah, you and I were talking about this kind of paradox of satisfaction, and we all think, we want to be on the beach, and that can be enjoyable.
Yeah.
But if we really think about, our most satisfying moments, often it's when we're accomplishing something difficult, we're overcoming a challenge, and this is really a mindset thing where if you have the mindset, you cannot do one more thing, you are at capacity. That can actually be a dangerous mindset. It's not a very flexible mindset, where if you have a mindset that's open and you think, I can learn, one new skill, or I can take on one new task, then that really helps you to stay flexible. And in my case, even more disciplined in terms of what activities are really necessary and which ones aren't.
It is more of an attitude than a reality. And so part of that stretch attitude is just having, that you can, and it's true. You can't take on everything, but you can take on one thing. You can take on one thing and fitting that one thing in and then conquering it. Imagine how you feel when you accomplish that. You'll feel great. The next thing has to do with being optimistic. And Carol Dweck has written a lot about a fixed versus a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset imagine that the skills and abilities they have really are stuff they were good at 16, and it doesn't change much from there. So if you have a fixed mindset, you don't believe in your ability to develop new skills or to be better at things, and so you avoid challenges. You are really careful about the assignments you take on because you can only be good at a few things. But if you have a growth mindset, you believe that you can grow, you can develop, you can change, you can learn new things, and you're capable of that. And if you work hard, you can figure things out, and you're comfortable with others giving you feedback and taking on challenges, and mistakes are opportunities for learning. When you try and having that optimism about trying helps you to be more successful.
So then the last one is self-honesty. And this is really, how honest an individual is with themselves and willing to then take action and improve. And, we have a lot of data to show that when we look at how people rate themselves on their overall effectiveness and compare that to how other people, rate that person on their overall effectiveness, we're just not good judges in that regard. We believe our own stories. We count our intention as action. So this is really about finding ways that we can be honest with ourselves, understand the realities around our behavior and how that impacts others, our teams. It's really about increasing our agility because we are able to then really see where we do need to adjust. And a classic example for me on this one is around listening. Off the cuff, I might say, I'm a good listener. I mean, I wouldn't say great, but I'd say good. But, then my kids start to tease me and they say that Dad saying, every 10 seconds while looking at your phone, that doesn't count as listening. So, then I start to get kind of a better sense of, okay, I can improve my listening. I can give full attention to the story about a girl wearing the exact same shirt as my daughter. And oh my gosh, how embarrassing. So for me, it's being honest with myself and recognizing and committing and saying, okay, my phone is in the drawer. My attention is on you. I can be a better listener.
And, the person that is most dishonest with us is ourselves. Well, we wanted to demonstrate the impact of these 4 behaviors on agility. And what's interesting in our data is if you're below average on all 4 of these enabling characteristics, your average agility score would be the 22nd percentile. Now, average is the 50th percentile. And so we're setting a pretty low bar here. If you're just above average on all 4 of these characteristics, your agility score jumps to the 79th percentile. And I find that really amazing.
It is.
Now, if you think about that, these things, they really are interconnected, aren't they? So, if I'm not honest with myself, but I'm really optimistic, right? I mean, that doesn't work. Or if any one of these things sort of really craters you down. And so as you think about how we could improve around agility, it's really getting a fix on, well, is there one of these that I'm not very good at or that I could use some improvement on? Being average or above average on every one of these really gives you a real benefit in terms of agility.
So let's give all of you then a little hint at where you might be on these 4 behaviors. So take a look at your email now, and you should have received your report from us. And the subject line will say something, along the lines of your agility index report. And as you open that up and take a look, it's going to, be like what you see on the screen here. So you're going to see a bar for each of those 4 behaviors that represents your score. And your score is determined by measuring your preference for that particular behavior because of your choice from selecting one of those 2 statements that we had in the survey. And so the high score is 15 for each of those behaviors. And if you have a higher score, then that means you have a high preference for that behavior, most likely something that you may practice often. Your lower scores then would indicate that you have a lower preference for that behavior. And that may end up being a good starting point for you to develop and increase your agility, because we do know there's a correlation between kind of your preference for something and then how good you are at it. But we're going to talk a little bit more to that. So we're going to give everyone a chance to make sure you find it, open that up, and take a look at your results. And as you're doing that, we're going to invite you to participate in another word cloud, but this is kind of a fun version because you can either submit or text in a word or an emoji. And so you can use either one of those to give us your reaction to your results.
I love the emojis.
Yeah, so we see some smiley faces. That's good. That's good. People saying they're surprised, some expected, thumbs up.
Okay.
And some creative. Looks like we've got some creative emojis in there that I have no idea what kind of reaction that is, but it's fun. Either way, we'll take that.
We got the new emojis.
So now we're going to kind of move on to the next step here, which is really, so how do we do this? How do we take the next step and actually move the needle in regards to increasing our agility? And so, as I've mentioned, we've done some research on preferences, and simply that people tend to be more effective at those skills where they have a stronger preference. And so your lower preference, again, that might be your lowest skill. But at any rate, this will at least give you a good starting point with the self-data that you have in front of you. And so the real secret sauce here at Zenger Folkman is something that we call leadership cross-training. And the idea is that the best way to become elite at something is to practice the skills and behaviors that are highly correlated with that key behavior. And so if you think about sports, right, if you want to be an elite swimmer, it's not just swimming more laps, right? That's the starting point. If you want to become elite, it's those cross-training activities. It's lifting weights. It's your diet. It's doing yoga. That's how good swimmers become great. And so leadership behaviors are the same way. And if you want to be just good, then do the basics, read a book, take a class. But if you want to be elite at a leadership behavior, then our research shows that you need to engage in leadership cross-training. And what's really neat is that we have done, and I'll use we because we get to take some credit, but really Joe has done all this research to help us statistically identify these important companion behaviors that provide those cross-training activities. And these are the behaviors that are going to give you the edge to becoming elite at some of these very important behaviors for increasing your agility.
And Jared, this is hard because if people think about agility, they just think, well, just be flexible.
Yeah.
Just be agile. Think agile. I mean, it doesn't work. I mean, the problem with a lot of our training and development is people get a topic like agility, but they end up with nothing to do because there's no clear way about how to move forward. What we've done for you is we've identified these 4 key characteristics, and now we're going to give you some specific developmental suggestions about what you can do to improve each one of those 4 characteristics.
Yeah, what I love about leadership cross-training is that it is practical. It's not just this theoretical kind of model. It's a practical way to move to action. So the first one, so for listen and learn, the companion behaviors that we found for listen and learn, first one is act for and act on feedback, which is really, Joe talked about the importance of feedback, and this is developing that habit of regularly asking. And I think both in formal and informal ways, you can find a consistent pattern of being able to ask for and act on feedback. The second one here, consideration for others. And so this is, that emotional intelligence component. If you're going to listen and learn, be open to the opinions of others, then being more aware of how your actions impact others is going to have an impact on that. It's going to help you be better at listening and learning. The next one is to give honest feedback. So we've talked about the importance of receiving it, but it's also interesting that here the importance of being able to give it. And sometimes it's difficult for us to tell people what they need to hear versus just kind of giving them a nice little pat on the back and letting them go their way a bit ignorantly around where they might need to improve.
And that's one of the funny things in our research. We just found that when you give it to others, you're more open into getting it.
Yeah.
and it's just this interesting thing that, it works, but we don't know why, but it sure works.
And the last one here is ask someone to be an observer. And so this is, really important. It's that outside influence that's able to maybe tell you things that you don't want to hear yourself, but also, give you insight into maybe some of the gaps that are difficult for you to see, or even your team. And we think a great way to do this is 360 feedback. We have the world's best 360 feedback and experience around that. So if you're interested, give me a call. But that's the last element there of listen and learn.
So let's talk about stretching yourself and how you do that. And the first suggestion is to ask others to stretch. And you go, well, how does asking others to stretch help me to stretch? Well, it's funny that when we ask others to speed up, we speed up. It's a little bit like when I'm riding my bike up the canyon and somebody passes me. What do? I speed up. And so asking others to up their game, there's this natural expectation that for most people, they don't want to, be a jerk about it, and they up their game too. Look for inspiration and energy. I wanted to hike the highest mountain in Utah, and so I got a picture of it. It's Kings Peak. It's 13,500 feet high, and I put that up, and then I showed it to my son, and I go, "Wouldn't that be cool?" And so we started talking about it, and just how would it feel? And boy, wouldn't that be cool? We could go to the highest peak. It was really hard. But it was sort of that vision of that thing that, and keeping it in mind and what it's going to do and the inspiration. The third thing is really the hard part, determination and grit. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, it's going to be hard, and you got to be willing to put in the hard work and put in the time, put in the hours.
Now you got to walk those 13,000 feet.
Yes. Yeah. It was the 45 miles before the mountain. And the last one is, recognize the need. When you think about the idea that why do I need to do this, and what's it going to change, and what's going to happen, and how it's going to help me in my career. I mean, if you recognize that need, again, it pushes you forward. These are things that'll help you move forward.
So the next one here, be optimistic. The first companion behavior is set high standards and be willing to take on challenges. So really, again, it's building on, if you're optimistic that you can change, that you can do that, you can be adaptable, then you're going to be willing to take on those new challenges and really be able to send that internal message that of optimism, right? That you're not going to do it begrudgingly, you're excited to do it. The next one is focus on the long view. And I think sometimes, we get so caught up in the day-to-day and getting those tasks done that we need to, kind of in that immediate sense, that we can lose our optimism by forgetting, either maybe it's the mission of our company, or it's that core value that our work really, helps us kind of fulfills for us personally. So taking that time to be able to focus on the long view can keep can keep you optimistic for change and progress.
You know, Jared, one of the hard things on my hike was that when you take a hike in the mountains, most of the time you're looking at your feet.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Instead of that goal, you know, and start looking at the goal, not your feet. Take the long view.
So then the third one here is develops others. And, you know, people, when they start developing others, they really start to kind of see that sense of excitement in other people. They see that progression and willingness of others to take on challenges, and they want to follow suit as well. It can be very exciting to be a part of someone's their own journey, and so then that can also help to build your optimism for your own self-development. And then the last one, innovate and collaborate. So rather than kind of thinking about this as a solo mission, you know, being optimistic in your ability to change can be a group effort. You can ask other people for support. You can rally the troops around you, and a lot of times it can be something that's exciting. Innovation and being able to fulfill on something innovative is a very exciting thing to participate in, and especially to participate in with others.
The last thing that we want to talk about is self-honesty. And it starts off with build more positive relationships with others. And what happens here is that if people really care about you, they'll be honest with you. And they'll tell you what really is happening. And you have to have a good relationship to get that kind of honesty from others. The next one's follow through. You know, it's really easy to start something. I love to set New Year's, you know, on New Year's Eve to set some, have some New Year's goals and things like that. But I like not to tell anybody about them, because then the next day I don't have to do them. But when you tell something about your goals, when you tell people, I'm going to start to do this, they naturally follow, they just check in with you. And that follow-up keeps you honest. It's probably one of the most important things we can do is to have a way to follow up. The third thing is focus and priorities. You do not have to boil the ocean. You don't have to be perfect. I mean, Jared started off this conversation about what we do is that we know these differentiating behaviors. You don't have to be good at everything. In fact, if you're good at just 3 things, you end up being really a very effective leader. And so try to be clear about the specific things you need to do, and you don't have to be perfect in everything. And the last thing is to have a goal to go above and beyond, to go the extra mile. And that convinces others that of your intentions, and it convinces yourself. But it also builds pride, builds self-pride in your ability to deliver. So at this point, what we'd like you to do is to look at your assessment, and typically you'd be thinking about the lowest score on what dimension you got the lowest score, because we find that, again, this correlation between preference and capability. You know, we tend to be good at those things we prefer. You could also think about which of these dimensions would have a positive impact on your current job performance. And so maybe it's not your lowest score, but as you look at, as you think about the 4, and as we've talked about the 4 today, and you think, gosh, you know, this really would help me in my current job, that would be a good choice. And then the third thing I want you to think about is passion. If you look at the lowest one and you go, yeah, I don't really like that, I don't care much about it, you might not really invest in that. But if you look at another one and it's about the same score, but you really want to do it, go with your passion. So choose one, and anything you do here helps you with agility. But again, we'd like to encourage you to select one of these issues for development, and then to create a development plan on how you'd improve. So I wonder what people are going to choose, Jared.
Yeah, so we want to hear from you. We want to know which one you are going to choose to work on, and so you can see there, is it going to be listen and learn? Are you going to stretch yourself? Are you going to be more optimistic that you can change? Or are you going to be practice a little more self-honesty. So we'll let people weigh in as you've kind of reviewed this. What one would you like to work on? Now, this is an unfair question because Joe wrote the survey, so he can game it. He didn't take it, but if you had to pick one, Joe, which area would you work on to become more agile?
You know, I think it's the listen and learn. My guess is I don't know, because that's where it all starts. But yeah, I think so. But then the stretch is tough to. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you got to be above average in all four, so you really can't choose a bad one. I think, as I was thinking about that, self-honesty for me is one where I could practice a little more self-honesty and put the phone in the drawer, ask my team for more feedback. Well, thank you everyone for doing that, and
nice spread there around all. You know,
yeah.
It looks like that. You know, that's a. You know, we've got people working in all four areas.
So we want to also provide you a resource, and Joe had just mentioned this briefly at the beginning, that will help you kind of take this to the next level. So, you know, it's nice to talk about it. It's nice to identify one, but we also want to help you think about specific actions that you can take. And so we've listed, you know, all those companion behaviors to each of those four enablers of agility. But we want to do one more thing for you. And we've created a brief development guide to help you increase your agility. So we've got all four of kind of these fundamental behaviors, and then we've got those companion behaviors listed. And for each of those companion behaviors, we've written 3 action items. And so something that's very practical, very specific, to help you think about what could you add to your development plan? What could you do starting right now today that would help you in the area that you've selected to work on? So you'll see that attached as a link in the email that you'll receive as a follow-up resource to this webinar. But if you don't get it for some reason, or you miss that, feel free to reach out to us. So then, before we kind of close this up, we want to end with another poll here. Just a few words around what your takeaways are from today. So this one is a little different. It's not a word cloud. So all the words that you type in will show up on the screen here. And so just a few words. What are your takeaways from today? So we see someone is saying agility is awesome. Someone says be stable and dynamic. Someone says I love leadership cross-training. Looks like just some of the behaviors: self-honesty, listen and learn. So very good, and we appreciate you all thinking and participating, and especially in all the polls today. It really adds a neat dynamic to the experience overall.
So one of the things we believe strongly in is that people really ought to have some development focus every year, something they're working on, some area they're trying to improve. And we hope that you'll join with us in this idea that this kind of a thing, this micro-learning experience, could be a real opportunity for you in a department or in a unit or in a group to get this kind of learning and to really have people walk away with a development plan that can help them be more successful and more agile. Again, agile organizations, the basic requirement is agile employees. What does Bill Gates say? Success today requires the agility and drive to constantly rethink, reinvigorate, react, and reinvent. So best wishes on this. I'd love to hear your comments or your questions, and please let us know if you'd like to do this whole process internally in your organization. Thanks so much.